Good to go.
Good to go. Okay, welcome to this evening's event. My name is Will Moss. I'm going to be your moderator for this event. We're going to learn more about Microsoft, working for Microsoft, but we're also going to learn specifically about the Azure Data team. So welcome. A little bit of housekeeping. If you're just now connecting to the event, please mute yourself and also turn off your video. The only folks that will be paying attention to on video will be myself as a moderator and the Microsoft team members that have volunteered their time to share their experiences and information about working at Microsoft and the opportunities available, of course. So let me quickly go over the agenda. And this evening's agenda, I'm going to give you guys a brief welcome on myself on HBCU Connect. If you're not already familiar with our organization, then once I, give some background about who I am, what my company does, and our relationship with Microsoft, I'm going to introduce our keynote speaker, who is Todd Singleton, and then Todd's going to, give some background on his journey, to Microsoft, what he's doing now, currently, and then once he finishes up, I'm going to introduce the team members that have taken their time out to share their experiences as well, now working at Microsoft. What they do a day in the life, their background and their journey and path to Microsoft as well. So I'll introduce each team member one by one so you guys can get to know them better, get to know what they do so that if you have questions, you can ask those questions in the chat to specific team members once they finish speaking. So I'll introduce each team member. Then once we've introduced each team member and you guys know who's speaking from the Microsoft side, we'll have sort of a brief panel discussion, sort of like a fireside chat between HBCU Connect and the team there at Microsoft within the Azure Data team. I have some questions about Microsoft culture, what it's like to be, a minority working at Microsoft. Some good questions to give you guys some insight on the Microsoft culture and the experiences of some of the team members that have been there. Some of which have been there long periods of time, and some of which that are actually just recently starting at Microsoft. So we'll have some panel discussion quickly. Then after the panel discussion, we will have the opportunity for you to ask some live questions to the panel for the benefit of everyone here that is watching. So you can ask those questions in the chat, and then I will read off those questions to the Microsoft team members on the panel. And then last but not least, after we go through that live Q&A, we'll end the event with next steps so that you know how to potentially land an interview with the Microsoft team. So again, quick housekeeping. If you're on video, you can actually turn the video off. The only folks that will have on video this evening will be the Microsoft team. And of course, please do keep your computer or your audio muted so we minimize any distractions. Okay, so without further ado, let me introduce myself and HBCU Connect. So my name is Will Moss, of course. Thank you guys for coming. Thanks for definitely paying attention to all of the email communications for the event. Thanks for joining us. My organization, HBCU Connect, you can kind of consider us a connection point for opportunities for the African American community and the HBCU community and minorities at large, because not only do we do events like this for African Americans and the HBCU audience, but we also have branched out and started hosting these types of events also for the Latinx community and anyone really, that is looking for an opportunity. Of course, these are open and inclusive events. So that's a little bit about my organization. We've had a relationship with Microsoft for at least 8 or 9 years now, which initially started out as an opportunity for Microsoft to get their jobs out in front of our audience on our website. But, Microsoft tapped me on the shoulder and said, hey, Will, this is great. How can we actually make sure that your members actually have some face time with our hiring managers so we can have conversations that lead to interviews and lead to hires? So we came up with the idea of hosting these events. Originally, they were physical events that we were hosting all over the country. And now that, COVID-19 hit, we haven't been doing these events in person. We are now hosting these events virtually. But kudos to Microsoft, because once COVID-19 hit, we actually had several physical events on the calendar that we were going to host in different parts of the country. But instead of canceling those events We just pivoted to doing those events online, and people are still getting opportunities to interview, and people are still getting hired. So kudos to Microsoft, one of our major partnerships over the years that has yielded lots of opportunities and many people landing careers with Microsoft. So these are real opportunities. In tonight's event, you're going to learn about the hiring organization, which is Azure Data. You're going to learn all about the organization, some of their opportunities they have available, and then how you can actually land that interview. And you can ask questions, whether they're cultural questions or whether they're specific questions about different roles within the organization. So that is the opportunity for you tonight. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker, who is Todd Singleton. So Todd, if you're ready, you can take over.
All right, great, Will. Thank you very much. What I'll do is I'll share my screen. I have a few slides I'd like to run through. Hey, good to be here. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for making time. We know you have really busy schedules, so we appreciate the chance to spend some time with you over the next 90 minutes. As Will said, my name is Todd Singleton. I'm a PM director in the Azure Data Product and Engineering Group. And PM for product manager, but we also have a number of program management roles in our org. So I've only been with Microsoft for about just over a year, and it's been an incredibly positive experience, and I'm going to step into that. But prior to joining Microsoft, I've spent time at a number of companies. I'm based in Northern California, here in Silicon Valley. So I spent some time at Google, spent some time at Intel, about 5 years at Intel. In fact, I was first introduced to the HBCU Connect while working at Intel. I attended a really nice event in Texas, and so I'm a big fan. And then prior to Intel, I've worked at a number of startups as well as big companies like IBM. Going all the way back to my first engineering role was with the National Security Agency in Maryland. I'm from the state of Maryland. I went to college in North Carolina, came out to California during the dot-com boom for graduate school, fell in love with the sun, and I've been out here ever since. So it's been a good run. I spent the first half of my career as an engineer, leading engineering teams, hands-on keys, developing software systems. And then I moved all the way over into a field role, focusing on sales. I really wanted to understand what makes the money move. So I went all the way to the other end, and then I've come back into product and engineering, where I feel most comfortable. So it's been a really good journey across a number of companies, across a number of roles. And it's really helped me develop a kind of a robust understanding of the end-to-end life cycle of a product. So when I came to Microsoft, there are two really compelling reasons for doing so. And that's what I'd like to touch on. The first one was the opportunity to work in data specifically. While at Google, I was working across the entire cloud, and I was getting very generalized, and I really wanted to get back to focusing on data. And then the second compelling reason was really around the culture of Microsoft. So I want to touch on those two things. The opportunity around data, and then the culture. I heard some music. Will, are we good? Okay, we're good. So in terms of the opportunity around data, like if we look at the public cloud, right? If we look at the three largest cloud providers here in the United States, we have Microsoft, we have Amazon, we have Google Cloud. These are fairly large businesses, right? Yet they're growing at a very high rate. They have a compound annual growth rate. Microsoft, in our last earnings report, announced that our cloud is growing at a 50% annual rate. Amazon at a 30% annual rate against a larger base, and Google Cloud against 50% as well. So that's incredible growth. And so what's really driving that growth rate? And it's really, in my opinion, one primary macro level trend, and that's data. So what we have here is a chart of the amount of worldwide data that's digitized, that's captured and stored on an annual basis. right? In 2010, we had about 2 zettabytes of data in storage, 2 zettabytes. By 2024, we should have somewhere around 150. So there's this incredible explosion of data, and that is what is driving the growth rate of the public cloud and if you IT spend and many of the innovations today across any technology firm and any non-technology firm. So what's really driving this trend in data? There are 3 things I like to look at. If we go back in time, right? There's the creation of data. We're going from manual creation of data to automated. And what do I mean by that? Like when I was a kid, the idea of being a data entry was a real job classification. Right? You can get hired to do data entry. At that point, the primary source of data creation was manual. You type it in. Right? And now, increasingly now, the vast majority of data is automated in terms of its creation. And that's because the number of data creators has gone from far fewer to far more, right? Now we have billions of IoT devices. Everybody's phone, everybody's refrigerator, TV, automobile, they're all producing data. And then thirdly, of course, the cost of storage has been drastically reduced. So that has created a tsunami, if you will, of data. And so that obviously attracted me the opportunity to work in this space. And so, as I mentioned before, everyone you're talking to tonight is from the Azure Data Group, right? So if you look at the Microsoft cloud, it's called Azure. Within that cloud, we have a group specifically focused on data. And it's a product group. We have about 45 different products and services within that group across 3 categories. The first one is operational databases or operational stores. So here we have your traditional databases, both your SQL databases and your NoSQL databases, right? So the 2 largest database vendors on earth, you have Oracle and you have Microsoft. So that business sits inside of our group. The second part of Azure Data is focused on analytics, right? So we have our analytics platforms, our analytics runtime engines. We have a flagship product called Synapse. And then the third group within Azure Data focuses on data governance. This is a newer piece or addition to our platform. Here you have a data catalog, you have our focus on data privacy, data sharing, and we have a roadmap around data governance. So we have these 3 main areas within Azure Data, 45 different products, growing at a very high clip, and a ton of opportunity. So the chance to join this group and to work on this macro level trend is one of the compelling reasons as to why I joined Microsoft. Now the second, and I want to spend a little bit more time on the second, is really around the culture of Microsoft. If you would have asked me 15, 20 years ago if I wanted to work at Microsoft, I probably would have said no. Just based on what I heard about the experience of working at Microsoft. But when Satya Nadella took over, I think that was 2014, and he really emphasized the need to lead the next leg of Microsoft by way of a cultural refresh. He wrote this book called Hit Refresh. As you can read here, it says, "The quest to rediscover Microsoft's soul and imagine a better future for everyone." So of course, everyone talks about culture, but is it genuine? Is it really working out? Is it really a point of emphasis? And as I began interacting with various relationships I had in Microsoft, I constantly heard a steady stream of, this is really happening. There's really a transformation taking place within Microsoft. And it's manifesting into the business results. We're doing really, really well, and we're growing at a very fast clip. All right, so I love this quote from Satya, our CEO. It says, "This culture," referring to Microsoft, "needs to be a microcosm of the world we hope to create outside of the company." All right. And so you know, in my first year, I start to, how genuine is this? And I've been very impressed by it. And two things that really jump out to me in terms of what's emphasized in the culture. One is empathy. How are we more empathetic with each other? How are we more empathetic with our customers? And how are we more empathetic with our partners? And the second thing is really around the growth mindset. And that growth mindset is not really just around growing revenue, but it's really around, are we growing in terms of our ability to learn? Are we going from a know-it-all type culture to a learn-it-all type culture? So those two factors attracted me to Microsoft. You know, the opportunity to work in data, as well as this cultural transformation that's taking place. So I joined in December of 2019, and pre-COVID. And then obviously COVID hit, no one saw that coming. All immediately we're working remotely. And then a few months after that, right, we had the murder of George Floyd. And of course, no one was expecting that. In terms of the response, for some reason, that triggered a response that I had not seen in my entire life, right? So I was curious to see how will Microsoft's values and how will Microsoft's culture respond in this space, in this moment. And it was a really, really tough. I've never experienced a summer where it was so difficult to show up for work, given what was going on in the community. But I was heartened to see Microsoft's response. So I'd like to share with you just briefly here. In late June, our C-suite got together and actually published this blog around our response or to the opportunity around racial justice and racial injustice. And there are a couple of things that were pointed out. And what really jumped out to me is that in my entire career in tech, I had never seen such pointed and specific direction from a C-suite in terms of a response to racial injustice. Microsoft is not the only company to respond this way, but it was refreshing to me to see Microsoft show up at this time in this way. And they pointed out three things. The first was to increase representation in culture and the culture of inclusion. So they set some very specific goals backed by the balance sheet. Right, so $150 million dedicated to diversity and inclusion investments. A commitment to double the number of managers, senior individual contributors, and senior leaders from the African American Black community by 2025. All right, that jumped out to me, to have a specific goal around a specific community or demographic. The second point was around engaging the ecosystem, right? So Microsoft committed an incremental $500 million to African American suppliers, $100 million to invest into African American owned banks, and a $50 million partner fund. All right, so again, specific numbers and specific targets. And the third point was really around strengthening our communities. And Microsoft actually runs a program called sorry, I forgot the name, but it was around equal justice. And they're staffing it up. When at this point in June of last year, there were about 5 full-time employees. I think they're staffing up to 12 to 15. So there's real commitment. And if I had to characterize what I'm seeing in Microsoft, I would say it comes across to me as very genuine and very intentional. Now, if I did a maturity of assessment of where Microsoft is in this overall conversation, look, I feel like Microsoft got off to a late start. If you look at the numbers and the statistics around diversity and inclusion within Microsoft, they're very low, very low. So I feel like Microsoft got off to a late start, but in terms of our direction, in terms of our intentionality, I feel like we're in a very good place. All right. So that's all I prepared. Just wanted to touch on those 2 points. Will, I think you may have a few questions, and then we'll go from there.
Absolutely. So first of all, congratulations on landing the role there at Microsoft. We've been working with Microsoft for a while, and we've been able to pick up the culture. But I like to reiterate, when you presented Microsoft's commitment, the thing that makes me excited and proud is that the way we built our relationship with Microsoft. One of their senior HR leaders reached out to me personally, saw what I was doing with HBCU Connect years ago, about 8 years ago, and we started with a lot of companies post jobs on websites and that kind of thing. But Microsoft said, hey, we want to do more. We want to make sure we move the needle. So it wasn't just a branding thing or yeah, we're there. It was more of a we want to make a difference. We want to hire people into some of these better roles. So since you've been at Microsoft, I'll start out with my favorite question to ask people. What is it that you like most so far about working at Microsoft?
It would have to be the people. I think the people are really sharp, a really sharp group of people. Everybody's really ambitious, but at the same time, people are laid back and humble. Right? I just don't come across much arrogance, and there's not that pretentious air of high tech. Laid back, hardworking, bright, and humble. I really enjoy the people.
And where are you work? What location are you working from right now?
So I'm in Northern California, and prior to COVID hitting, I was going up to Seattle. Seattle is our headquarters in Redmond, Washington, and I was going up there every week, getting to know the team. So obviously, like every other company, we went 100% remote and started using our own product, Teams. And that's I'd say that's working out. I think that transition was handled pretty well.
And so how has it been coming up to speed in more of a leadership position, going from your last position and now at Microsoft?
It was a tough onboarding. I think some of that had to do with the fact that I was onboarding during COVID. I think at the same time, like I mentioned before, the cloud is growing so quickly. So the business is growing so fast. To really thrive in Microsoft, you need to do well in ambiguity, right? You need to figure out how to add value. There is so much opportunity. I don't know of anyone who feels boxed in. If anything, you might feel overwhelmed because there's so much room for your wings to spread. There's so much opportunity because we're growing so quickly. So with that, I feel like I prefer that problem. I prefer to say there's opportunity all around me. I just got to figure out how to prioritize and make it work. And so, it's been good overall. Net has been positive.
And what was your interface into Microsoft? Did you get in through, networking with some folks that were already here, were already there?
Yeah, good question. I had a couple of colleagues that worked at Intel with me, and one was my manager, and she came over to Microsoft first.
Okay.
And so that helps, right? It helps when there's someone you really trust. And she said, look, this is impressive what I'm seeing. And again, she emphasized the genuine aspect of the cultural transformation. It wasn't just a commercial, right? It was genuine. And that really, I was intrigued by that.
Excellent. So let me thank you, first of all, for keynoting. And I'll ask you, if you would, to kind of hang on for our panel discussion.
Okay, sounds good.
But yeah, I appreciate you taking the time out. Like I said, again, congratulations on the role, and thanks so much for keynoting. I'm sure there may be some questions that come through in the chat that might be specifically for you. So to the candidates that are on, if you have questions, please drop those questions in the chat, and I'll ask the Microsoft team. If you see those questions, feel free to answer and engage. Okay, so with that, I'll go ahead and take over the presentation. Let me share my slides once again and introduce our next speaker. So for the candidates, if you have your video on, you can actually turn your video off, because the only folks that'll be on video will be the Microsoft team members that are presenting. So please turn your video off and make sure to stay on mute. So, okay, our next speaker is Sebastian Rivera Gonzalez. So Sebastian, if you're ready.
Yeah, hello everyone. Thanks for the invitation to participate today at this event. My name's Sebastian, as Will already mentioned. I'm from Monterrey, Mexico. I don't know if I think the slides move a little bit.
Yeah, my apologies. Someone actually took over the presentation.
Oh, okay.
So let me share my.
Sure, no problem.
We're good. We're good. There we go.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm originally from Monterrey, Mexico, which is a city close to the Texas border. It's like 2 hours away from Laredo, Texas, if no one knows that city. So I grew up here. I went to school there at ITSM for a bachelor in digital systems and robotics, which doesn't actually exist in US universities, but when you compare it with a similar program, it's like computer engineering. But since I was in my second year at the university, I was really interested in software, so I went more in that direction. Before I joined Microsoft, I was a software engineer in Austin, Texas, for a company called National Instruments Corporation. They develop hardware and software, so I was part of the drivers software development team. The drivers that the customers use to manipulate the hardware devices. That was the products in which I worked on, and what I realized is that it was a really interesting job. I really enjoyed what I was doing. The challenges, the technical challenges were interesting, but the impact that I was having, it was just like for a small group of people, like only the very specific customers that use National Instruments hardware were the ones that were using my code. So I had a very good friends that were working at Microsoft. Actually, one of them is the one who recommended me for the position, and he also works in Azure Data in the same product in Azure Sql Database. He talked with me. He told me about his experience and what he was doing, and I was super amazed by the impact that he was having. Like in his daily tasks, he was actually impacting a product that's like worldwide deployed and that has millions of customers, millions of databases running around. So I realized that I was still early in my career and that I wanted to have a larger impact with what I was doing. So yeah, I accepted the invitation to start the recruitment process. I had some interviews, which actually got paused by COVID. I started the recruiting process in February of 2020. So I was invited for the final round at Redmond, but then the pandemic hit and everything was paused, as I said. And afterwards, like already Todd mentioned it, that Microsoft did a really good job in keeping up with everything that was planned to be in person. They moved it to virtual. So I was able to have my final round, and well, thankfully I got the offer. I was super excited, and I joined Microsoft in August of 2020. It was really interesting to move in the COVID era. But I managed to do that. So yeah, now it's been 8 months. It's gone really quick. I've never been to, well, I went a couple of times to the office, but still, I'm still excited for my official first day at the campus, which hopefully will be sooner than later. And yeah, it's amazing the way in which things grow, all the features that are coming up to the desk each day is super exciting. I still don't understand the magnitude of my work, and working with these systems is something that I never imagined really when I was in school. So yeah, thanks for the invitation, and I'm really happy to answer any question that people from the audience may have. Thanks.
So let me ask you a couple of questions.
Yeah.
What location are you in currently?
Okay, so I decided to rent a house in Bellevue, close to Bellevue downtown, with my friend, the friend that recommended me, and another friend that they are also from Mexico. We went to school together, so we rent out a house in Bellevue. But since we're like working from home, I'm in Monterrey right now.
Okay.
So I'm in Mexico. Yeah, enjoying some
Nice.
time with the family.
So you're currently working from home. I was going to ask you, what was it like onboarding through COVID? But more specifically,
Oh,
you said you interviewed in February.
yeah, I began like the first interview was in February, and then the final round was in early April, so like almost a year ago.
So to all of the candidates that are out there, listening in, don't be discouraged if it takes, more, if once you submit your information to Microsoft, it could take a little bit of time, but they're hiring and they are looking for more talent. So Sebastian, let me ask you, what technologies are you working on? Like, I know you recently started, but what are some of the technologies you've been working on?
Sure. So my team is part of the high availability of Azure SQL Database. So Azure SQL Database is the cloud version of another product that Microsoft built many years ago, which is called SQL Server. And right now, what we offer here is highly available databases for our customers in many regions in the world at any moment in the day, right? So we need to be up 24/7 at 365 days per year, and what we're working on right now is on the replication of the databases. There's some technologies that manage the replication of these databases, so that if there's a deployment coming in, we want to fail over into one of the other replicas, so that if the customer still is doing some transaction or is reading out some information from his database, he will be able to get it out, even if the deployment is installing the new bits on a specific Azure virtual machine, right? So we're working on that technology. We're mainly on the backend, and it's really interesting because Azure SQL DB is not a static product. There's like every 2 or 3 years there's a new offering that they are creating. So the newest one right now is called Hyperscale, which is a technology. It's an offering from the Azure SQL DB product that can increase independently the computing and the storage on it. So customers can decide if they want to grow only the computing or only the storage. Whereas in the past they needed to grow both. They were tied up basically, so they needed to grow both at the same time. So it's more challenging from the backend to manage these two independently, and there's still some room for improvement there. So yeah, but that's kind of what I'm working on. Those are technologies.
So what programming languages or databases
Okay.
technologies did you have to know? And that's the explanation you just gave is great. But like, what did you have to bring to the table, like as far, or what did you have to learn as far as programming languages or databases?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if you were expecting like a programming language. So
this is
yeah,
good.
that's
Great.
C++ was is what we use mainly to develop the backend.
Okay.
There's some technologies. We have some bots that are monitoring the databases, which are that infrastructure is done in C#. So we want to detect if there's some issue with a database before the customer realizes that they are going to have some issues. So we want to mitigate with these bots the problem. So that's in C#, but the backend is in C++. And something that I leveraged from my past experience is that at National Instruments, all the drivers that we developed were also in C++.
Okay.
So that's I got like a 1 year experience at drivers and C++ to then tackle the interviews, and I think that was something really positive from the past experience.
Last question for you. So far, at the time that you've been at Microsoft, what is it that you like most about working at Microsoft?
Okay. I think that it is the fact that I always feel challenged. Like every time I get a new task is not I don't feel that I'm 100% comfortable. So even though they can be like the task that my manager gives to me, they can be related in some way. Each time there's some part of the task that I don't know how to tackle it at first, and I always think like, how am I gonna solve this? Like that's always when I first see the task, I say like I don't know how to do that, and then I do like some retrospective, and I see, wow, like yeah, I could do it. I was able to tackle it. So that part of being challenged each and every time is something that really excites me.
Excellent. Thank you, Sebastian. So appreciate you taking the time out to share your experiences. And if you want to hang on, there might be some questions that come up in the chat that you can answer. And then we'll have our panel discussion and bring you back later. Cool?
Yeah, I'll be here. Thank you.
Thank you. So our next speaker is going to be Naya Scott, who is a software engineer within Azure Data. So Naya, if you're ready.
Hello.
Greetings.
Hi, everyone.
Did I pronounce your name correctly?
Yes.
Perfect. So welcome. If you could just kind of give us some background, your path to Microsoft, and what you currently do there at Microsoft.
Okay. So yeah, my name is Naya, and I'm working under Azure Data. My team is responsible for Azure Arc enabled Postgres, Hyperscale, and I've been doing a lot of the UI experiences, so adding to Azure Data Studio, as well as now shifting towards Azure Portal, being able to create, deploy Postgres servers, sorry. And my experience with Microsoft, so I only started August of last year. I graduated from RIT May 2020, so that was a big shift. Was really excited to start work full time, and I originally had plans to move to Seattle, but because due to COVID, I stayed home with my family in Brooklyn, New York, and I will be able to stay working remotely, which is something that I preferred in the sense that all my family and friends are here. So it was a blessing in disguise for me being able to be closer to loved ones. I did intern with Microsoft summer of 2019, and I was a software engineering intern with the same team that I currently work for now. And that was really exciting just because I believe I had applied and interviewed with Microsoft, I think my sophomore year, didn't get it. So when I got the internship, I felt very proud of myself. So that was nice. I've also interned with companies such as Google, Intel, Paychex, all dealing with software engineering. And I am a computer engineering. I went into college having more of a hardware background. So software was not my focus heading into college. I never took a computer science class or anything. I knew it'd be beneficial in the long term. And by a stroke of luck, I had a software internship my freshman year of college, and that just progressed into landing me other jobs, and now I can call myself a software engineer today. So that's my long story short, really.
So let's go. Let's take it way back because
Okay.
we might get a cool story out of it. How did you get interested in computers to choose to go into computer engineering? So what was your story, I guess, that gave you that exposure that made you want to do that?
My story, it's a bit jumbled. So really, I think when I was younger, I was really good in math. So it is trying to apply, okay, I do well in this. What can I do to include that? What classes align to that? And that's what sparked my interest in engineering. And when I was in high school, I went to a specialized high school where we had to pick a major. I did electrical mechanical engineering, found out physics was not for me. So, but I really did enjoy digital systems design, which I was able to take in my high school courses. So looking for either mechanical, electrical, or courses that align to that is really what my focus was on. And it wasn't until I visited my college campus when I was like looking through colleges that I heard of computer engineering, and it sounded really cool in the sense of blending the hardware that I'm used to, and again, getting that familiarity with computer science that I felt could be useful later down the line. The reason why I got the internship was because the way my school did the curriculum, my college did the curriculum, is you take 2 computer science classes freshman year. So that's all I really had under my belt. So when I was looking for internships, they said, oh, okay, you have Python and Java. I did the interview. And in my head, I'm like, this is new to me. Oh, I'm better with circuits. I'm better with hardware. And it ended up being a really cool experience.
Cool. So, quick question: what technologies do you currently use on the job? Like, what languages are you working with? And then, what is sort of a day in a life like for you?
Got it. Okay. So languages. Again, out of my comfort zone, I do a lot of UI work. So all of this was pretty much new to me when I came into my position. I work with TypeScript and a bit of Python, but mainly I'm using TypeScript in order to create the user interfaces that I've been doing. Shifting from everything that I was using before was shifting from using Azure Data Studio versus Portal. It's same language, but getting used to working on a browser, which I was not familiar with before. So that's all been new for me. And I believe my team, they mainly use Python on the back end.
Excellent. My favorite question. So, I know we have a couple folks that have just joined in. If you can make sure you're on mute, and then also turn off any video feed. Okay. So Naya.
Yes.
My favorite question to ask: what is it that you like so far most about working at Microsoft?
What I like so far, I think I like how easy it is to connect with people. I know earlier on it was mentioned how we don't really run into a lot of I want to I would say people are humble. People are very smart, but everyone's open to just having a conversation, understanding where it is that you want to go, or just adding some guidance. And I feel like when I first started, since I was working remotely and I'm a very social person, I was very scared that I was going to feel very out of place because I'm just in this little corner of my office to myself. And the people that I reached out to who I had no contact with, it could be I was part of I did a workshop and I just contacted someone who spoke saying, hey, I really liked what you said. Could we connect? There was a lot of openness, and that I really appreciated because I feel like I like the idea of liking your environment and the people that are around you for your workday to be pleasant. And even though no one's physically around me, I'm constantly meeting people to this day. Like I work with 3 different teams now, and it's been really cool. So that's been the most enjoyable thing for me.
Excellent. So let me thank you first of all for sharing your time, sharing your experiences. Congratulations on landing a recent role. But let me ask one last question because
Sure.
I think some people might benefit from this. What was the interview process like for you? Interviewing at Microsoft, because a lot of people, have a software engineering background, but they might be intimidated by the interview process. What was it like for you?
So when I'd interned as an intern, when I interviewed for an intern position, that was the first time being like getting the experience of having a company have to like fly me out to talk to me. So that was already new. And then you also get introduced to the 4-hour interview. So it was basically you meet all the other people who are trying to apply for this internship. There are 4 interviews in 4 hours. So it's you have an interview, you go back, you can have like a drink, tea or snack, have another interview, go back. And it was a mixture, mainly technical like coding problems and some behavioral, but I did have friends who had all behavioral for there. So it's really just prepare for whichever one comes. I think when I did the day, it went by a lot quicker. Like when you first hear 4 hours, it seems like it can be a bit of a drag, but it was very quick. And when it came to full time, because I was an intern my junior year, your internship is viewed as your interview. So it's basically a relation between your manager and your HR recruiter to help facilitate if you're on track for getting a full-time offer towards the end of the summer. They typically have really high rates of people being able to get a full-time offer, but that is how I was able to come in as full-time.
Excellent. So again, thank you for sharing your experiences.
No problem.
There may be some questions. So if you guys have questions specifically for Naya, feel free to drop those questions in the chat. And then Naya, if you kind of keep an eye on the chat and answer any questions. Okay, so let me introduce our next speaker, if she's with us. Aurelia, is Aurelia available? I know she might have been tied up. So if not, we'll just move to our next speaker and then we'll come back. Okay, so let's move to our next speaker, who is Delitso Banda. So Delitso, if you're ready, I'd like to introduce you.
Hey everyone.
Hey, welcome.
Hey, name is Daliso. I'm originally from Luanshya, Zambia. Part of the GSL team, Gray Systems Lab team. Same team as Aurelia, actually. So it's a applied research group under Azure Data. And before that, I was a MADUP fellow at Microsoft. So MADUP is also known as the AI rotation program. So it's for recent grads, so new hires, and it focuses on solving various AI-related projects across Microsoft. So within the program, you'd have like rotations for like around 6 months each with different groups in Microsoft. So that gives you, exposure to, the different sort of teams at Microsoft. And it's a good way to help the transition straight out of college into the company. So I did that for 2 years. So I did 4 rotations of about 6 months each. And then afterwards, I joined Gray Systems Lab. So that kind of connection happened because I did 1 rotation with them and I really liked it. I decided I also wanted to explore a bit more of the research life, especially from the angle of being a software engineer. Because that was like stood out to me as a very interesting role, because like it's not exactly the same as a full-on product team. So there's different experiences, and I'll be happy to talk a lot more about that as well.
Yeah, if you could kind of give us your progression. So how did you end up working for Microsoft after you graduated? Did you work somewhere else before? So did you come over as industry, or did you come straight out of college?
Yeah, so I had I did my bachelor's. I did my bachelor's at MIT, and then I took a short break. I spent a few months at IBM. I worked with IBM's Watson group, and then I went back to my university for master's. And I did my master's where I focused more on AI and like computer systems. And then after that, I joined the MADUP program. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So the program, that's how you got your foot in the door there at Microsoft. So so with your current role, what hands-on, like what technologies are you using on a day-to-day basis, or what languages are you programming in?
Yeah, so on a day-to-day basis, I use a lot of Python. Python is a really nice, flexible language where you don't have to worry too much about how like the syntax and typing and all that sort of things. I think it's much easier for people who are relatively new in the field to pick up. So we use a lot of Python, and a lot of the projects I work with are also related around sort of data science and data pipelines. So we use lots of technologies related to Spark. So Spark is like a common kind of distributed computing framework for like, large chunks of data. So those are some of the main technologies we use. So particular Spark is more like in the Java ecosystem. So those types of frameworks. Yeah.
So let me ask you, just out of curiosity, how did you get into technology and software? Like, what was your story that kind of got you interested?
Yeah, my story, I think maybe my first like experience really with like doing anything programming was one of my brothers took this like short like basic course in school, and I saw what he was doing, and it was really interesting to me because like I'd always been fascinated about how people do things like make video games and that sort of thing. And so I always wanted to make a video game, and I thought by learning up like some programming concepts, I can do something like that. So I learned a bit of basic, very simple, tic-tac-toe type games or something very basic. Didn't work so well, but it was just something that got me interested, and it was one of those things where like I saw that I could solve a problem, just by laying out an algorithm, and I guess that was my first exposure. I got really interested inside, taking courses and reading up if I could. I got access to there's like a common like intro to Python book that I picked up, and from then I think I just built more and more interest. When I came to college, initially I wasn't sure if like being a full-on programmer would be something for me, even though I enjoyed it a lot. I thought maybe something more sciencey. So initially I thought I would like to be a material science. So I took a few material science courses, but I still really like programming, and I decided to switch to computer science, even though it was hard and it was challenging because like I feel I didn't have like the strongest background, but I guess I persevered, and it's something I became more and more comfortable with.
For sure. So what is it that you like most about working at Microsoft?
Yeah, I really like the people. I really like how the culture allows me to try new things. I like this concept of like psychological safety. So like in my work with GSL and with MadeUp, I've had a chance to take on many, sort of like more risky projects, many experimental projects, especially in the research space. You never really know exactly, what results are going to be like. But I like that I can have that opportunity and not fear too much about how things turn out. So that kind of opportunity to try new things, take some risks here and there. Yeah. And I think also like people in my team have been very supportive, creates a good like environment where people can collaborate together. It's not like hyper competitive or anything like that. We all try to support each other and help each other to grow.
Excellent. So Delitso, thank you for sharing your time and your experiences. If you'll hang on for our panel discussion, I'll go ahead and introduce our next speaker.
Yeah.
So thank you. Yep. So let me go back. I think Aurelia is on with us. So Aurelia, if you're ready, let me go back to your slide to introduce you. So Aurelia is a principal scientist within Azure Data. So welcome.
Hi, I'm so sorry for being late.
No worries.
Very happy to be here.
No worries. So if you was just kind of introduce yourself and give us a little bit of background on your path to Microsoft and what it is you currently do at Microsoft.
Yeah, so I've been in Microsoft for about 5 years now. I'm in the same group as Daliso and Carlo, GSL, which I believe they said already it's a R&D lab in Azure Data. And before joining Microsoft, I was in IBM Research for about 3 years. Mostly my industrial experience so far has been in research positions. And you know, as you basically put on the slide before that, I did my PhD in US and my bachelor degree in Greece in Athens.
And what are your current responsibilities? What is a day in the life like for you?
Yeah, so it's pretty exciting. At GSL, we basically look into what are the next interesting and challenging problems to solve that could impact our products and our customers. We're looking a little bit long term. So part of our job is to think what is an important problem to solve. And then when we have a good idea of what we want to do, we actually work towards prototyping a solution, demonstrating to products, to other members of the team, getting feedback, and try to set up collaborations with the product teams to see how we can move this forward, how we can incorporate in our products, and how to have people use it and do something useful.
So I find that very interesting because I always felt like a dream job for me. I'm also a computer scientist by trade. So got my computer science degree, worked in corporate America as a software engineer. But I always thought my dream job would one day be to do prototyping. So when you mentioned that, it kind of piqued my interest. So what is it like to do the prototyping? Do you get to choose the technology in which you build the prototype, or what technologies are you using to build those prototypes?
We have a choice on that, and obviously we have to think carefully about what kind of technologies we want to use, because eventually we want our products to use our work, so it can't be something completely unrelated. Right now in our project that I'm working on, I'm using a lot of Python. It's the same. It's one of the projects that Lisa is participating, so it's tailored for data scientists, and that's why we use Python. We use Pandas. We use these kind of frameworks. In the past, we worked on many open source technologies that are also adopted by Microsoft. For example, in our group, we have a bunch of people working in Hadoop, HDFS, Spark, and basically large-scale data analytics technologies that are also open source and part of our products. So it kind of depends on the phase we are, the project, but we always try to be aligned with the community, both internally and externally.
Excellent. So if I'm someone, let's say I have a data science background, right, or maybe my degree is in data science, or maybe I'm a data scientist working at a different company, or maybe I even have a computer science background and I want to be a data scientist at Microsoft. What kind of skills does a person have to bring to the table to be in the role that you're in currently at Microsoft?
So I'm not a data scientist. So I'm a researcher, I would say, in data management, but we do have data scientists in our group, and they have a background on statistics, machine learning, and they're familiar with the data scientist frameworks like Python or R. But I would suggest maybe you can talk more to one of data scientists. I don't know if anyone is on the panel to give like more concrete details about what are their skills and background.
Sorry about that. So principal scientist, as a principal scientist.
Okay.
that's what I meant. So to be in your role, what kind of skills does a person need to bring to the table? Sorry about that.
So I think because of the nature of the group, we are in research. It's a bit different from principal level at product groups. So from our group, you need to have shown some initiative in basically exploring new areas, thinking about new problems and new ideas, and demonstrate that you can provide a solution that can be impactful. So this is sort of how we judge at GSL, I think, which is a bit different. So in every group is a bit different. GSL is a bit unique on that aspect because you need to bring this new problem, new idea on the table, I think.
Excellent. So let me ask my favorite question to you. What is it that you personally like most about working for Microsoft?
So there are a bunch of things I like. One is the culture. I think Dalis also mentioned, I feel Microsoft is inclusive. I feel it's diverse. I see that people have respect for each other. I mean, I can't claim for that for every group because, I don't have that much experience in different organizations, but I see that in Azure Data, I see it at GSL. We collaborate. I see people, senior people and junior people collaborating nicely in projects, not being super competitive, listen to each other, learn from each other. So I really enjoy that culture. And obviously, I also enjoy the technical aspects of my work. I like working on long-term problems. So that's something I enjoy, and it's sort of particular to GSL, I think.
Excellent. So let me thank you for taking the time out to share your experiences. Yep. So we'll have a panel discussion, so you can feel free to participate. But if anyone has questions, please ask questions in the chat, and then I'll ask you to keep an eye on the chat if you can answer any specific questions. Okay, so let me introduce our next speaker, who will be our last speaker before we jump into a panel discussion and Q&A. And our next speaker is Pablo Castro, Distinguished Engineer, Director of Engineering within Microsoft. So Pablo, if you're ready.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, and hi everyone. Thanks for spending the time today and joining us in this event. So I guess briefly about me, I've been at Microsoft a lot longer than I thought I would. Like I grew up in South America, in Argentina, and I had an opportunity to come over, and I was like, I'll go join Microsoft for maybe 1 year to see what it is like to work in a company like that, and in the process, check out what it was like to live in the US. That was like almost 19 years ago, so clearly I kept finding reasons to stick around. So over the years, like what has kept me at Microsoft is that I've had chances to do all sorts of things. I've held different roles, worked in different areas, worked on very mature products. I had the rare chance of starting some products from scratch, including some of the parts of Azure. There's kind of a lot of fun, very educational opportunities. And also had the chance to work with a lot of people that are have extensive experience in different domains, and you can learn so much from them. So right now I work on Azure Data, where I manage the engineering teams that build some of the products that we build as part of Azure, including Synapse, SQL Analytics, and Azure Cognitive Search. And these represent a great mix of interesting problem spaces, interesting technologies. And I would say one thing I find fascinating about working in this particular space is that you get to sit on the other side of some of these products where, many of us have used databases. For example, it's like a SQL database. And SQL, it has select statements like declarative queries, it has transactions, things like that, and we all use them. But what does it take to build one of those? So what does it take to be on the other side and kind of write the code that runs the queries, that that does a query optimization or planning, that does the storage engine details, that deals with transactions, things like that. So we get to work on all those spaces. If you're interested in systems programming, distributed systems, database systems, that kind of problem space, there's so much interesting work to do in our area that I would encourage you to look at all the opportunities we have around. So I'll stop there. I know we're running a little long on time. Happy to answer any questions.
So you're a distinguished engineer at Microsoft, and welcome back, and thank you again for being a panelist to share your experiences. So one thing I found interesting the last time we spoke at one of our previous events was your progression. So if you could kind of maybe explain to folks, because I know like some of us are really ambitious, right? As software engineers, and we want to come in. We come in at one level, but we want to become that distinguished engineer one day. And so you're at Microsoft, one of the greatest companies of all time, especially with regards to software development. And you're a distinguished engineer at Microsoft. So what was it like for your progression? Like where did you start? When you came in the door at Microsoft, and then how did things fall into place for you? And what things did you have to do to be promoted and to progress in your career?
That's a great question. I have to say first, they make these big titles. Like I always still find that someday they'll find out, and they'll say, okay, we'll take this back from you, and you go code your thing there. So it's humbling when somebody does a gesture like this for you, right? In terms of progression, So I had been a developer before working at Microsoft. I had been a developer for many years. When I joined Microsoft, I wanted to try something else, so I tried program management for a while. I enjoyed many aspects of the program management role. I think it's a lot of fun at Microsoft. Personally, I missed the code too much, so I went back into kind of technical lead role, back to code. To your point of kind of prototyping and starting projects, I always had a passion for undefined problems where you don't really know, where to start, and that's part of the job. So the role as architect allowed me to do that for some time. Where these are the roles you want to tackle once you spend some years on like building products, because you want to put experience to work, you want to put your instincts to work. And these are things that they're not magic. Like you build them out of making mistakes, out of trying. The first few years, both inside and outside of Microsoft, to me were foundational in the sense of I made, it's all sorts of mistakes. I learned from a ton of people. I wrote code that I'm proud of and code that is highly questionable, and I hope somebody replaced it. And in the process, I got to build up enough confidence to then tackle problems that were a lot more undefined. And also, I grew into having kind of points of view on how should a company like Microsoft, that carries a lot of name, to go and say, this is how Microsoft should approach this or that problem. So that progression helped me, over time. Again, I started a lot of things that failed or didn't go anywhere, but over time, some of these things took. And there's this great kind of reinforcement cycle where things go well, and then you are given more slack to make even bigger bets and taking more interesting risks. That kind of gave me more opportunity for growth, and also to learn. To cite one example, many years ago, I forget, maybe 6-7 years ago, we were in the early stages of Azure, and I was experienced developer in terms of database systems and kind of systems in general, but building cloud systems, it was a new discipline. It's not like they teach you how to build an Azure. There's only 3 or 4 of these things. There's like Azure, Amazon, I don't know, Google. So it's not like they teach people, they teach you how to use it, but not how to make one. So I felt it was, as part of rounding up my own career, I needed to know how to build one of these. And I pushed around, and I found the space, support with my leadership, to say, hey, I'm going to go build one of these from scratch. And I don't know how to build one. So bear with me. And that worked out well. Actually, that's one of the services that today is part of Azure Data. And after that, I got a chance to build a few others. So that kind of support from our leadership and support from others that know more I think they were critical in this progression over time. And yes, after many years, this day where your manager comes in and says, "Hey, here's your new title," and those things give you a pause. They're quite a moment.
I love it. I mean, your story speaks to the thing a lot of people have mentioned about what they like about working with people at Microsoft is about how humble people are. So I can appreciate that, and I'm sure our candidates can as well. But congratulations to you with all of your success at Microsoft, and appreciate you taking the time out. So let's kind of transition into our panel and Q&A. So we've got about 20 some minutes left to speak. So if all of the Microsoft folks would turn your video on, and I'm going to ask a couple of panel questions that I drew up around culture. So Pablo, since you are our last speaker, I'll let you kick this first question off I have around the Microsoft culture, and if you feel it's okay to be yourself, as an employee or a team member within Microsoft.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that keeps me at Microsoft is that I think it's an environment where people make a legitimate actual effort to make sure everybody is in a place where they can do their best work while they're comfortable, and they don't have to artificially kind of be different to fit. There are all these stories, but so I'll just, it's a short one. when I came to Microsoft, like, I joined, and the day I joined, I realized actually I didn't speak English nearly as well as I thought I did. I grew up in Argentina, first language is Spanish, and I'm sitting in this meeting, and I'm like, I don't understand what's going on. Like, how I'm gonna do this job? That lasted just not even that whole day, because immediately I realized how accommodating people were. Like, they had infinite patience. They can actually understand anything you say. Like, people are kind of so used to the mix of accents and backgrounds and whatnot that that even though it was that scary moment on that first meeting, it turns out that everyone just wanted to make it work. Many years later, I still suspect that whenever the farther I get from Microsoft, the less people understand me, because I got conditioned into people kind of being too nice to me and kind of making an extra effort. So it's unclear that my English would actually work too far from here.
Excellent, love it. So my next question, and I'll ask for a volunteer to answer this one. And this is around, it's a culture question, as well within Microsoft. But have any of you participated in any of the employee resource groups, especially those of you that maybe recently started and used the employee resources group as a way to connect with some of your colleagues? Can anyone speak to that?
Hello.
Yes.
Hi. When I interned, it was a lot easier to participate with the ERGs. I get in person, build that connections. I was a part of BAM had a summer engagement for interns, so that was really, really cool, because they paired me up with a mentor, and they had events to socialize, to have us all socialize with one another. So I really enjoyed that. I also went to some events for OLA as well as Women at Microsoft.
Excellent. And for us, like, from the outside looking in, but partnering with Microsoft, hosting some of these events, the ERG groups have been like instrumental, especially like when we would fly into a city. Let's say we're doing a recruitment event in Dallas, where the effort was coming out of the headquarters. The local ERG groups would always participate, bring employees there to network with our candidates as well. So that's great. Thank you for sharing that experience. So this next question, is another cultural question. So I'm going to ask this one to Todd. So Todd, what is it that you like most about the Microsoft culture specifically, within Microsoft? And to any of the candidates, if you have questions, you can go ahead and drop those questions in the chat, and I'll read some of your questions off as well.
I really appreciate that growth mindset. What are we learning? I mean, it shows up in every aspect of my work. When we have reviews, it's constantly, what are we learning? Even around the ERGs, you just mentioned the employee resource groups. The fact that we're so deliberate, even like, how can I be an ally? For example, I'm learning how to be a better ally to the Women in Engineering resource group, right? And the fact that you get training and people make all types of mistakes, and hey, let's grow together, and let's learn more and learn again. And I appreciate that. It's not a fixed, you have to know the answer, this, that, and the third. There's just room to grow.
Excellent. So my next question, I'm gonna shoot this question to Sebastian. So you have to blame Stephen for this question, because he told me to ask you. But what is fresh stage and new stars of data?
Okay. Yeah, that's a great project that I actually wanted to answer it when you asked the first question. So within Azure Data, there's like a section of OLA, which is for like ERG for the Latinx community. And this project fresh stage is for new speakers that want to engage in presenting different conferences. So there's some really talented people that has a lot of experience in presenting. Pablo, one of them, Julie, and there's really nice folks that are pushing us to present at these events. And I was able to present at event called New Stars of Data, which is an event organized by an external organization, external to Microsoft, which is called Data Grilling. It's a group of engineers or people related to data, which they are based in Germany. And this event was for people within data in any company that they have never presented before. So I submitted a presentation, and I was able to deliver it back in March of this year. So really exciting to have these opportunities, and also to have the chance of getting some coaching from other folks around. It's been a great experience.
Excellent. Thank you. So let me ask this next question to Deliso. Deliso, where are you located currently?
So I'm in Sunnyvale, California.
Is the team that within Microsoft also there in Sunnyvale, California as well?
Yeah. So GSL has a group over here. There's also a group in Redmond and Wisconsin, and also actively looking to hire people in Atlanta. Okay. So there is like a few different options.
Did you have to relocate to California to work for this particular team?
Yeah. So I was based in Boston before. Yeah, so I had to do the whole like relocation during the pandemic. So.
Oh wow. Well, so what has it been like working with a distributed team? So folks that are in different parts of the country.
Yeah, so that's a good question. My transition was a bit smoother than most other people, I think, because the rotation team kind of has that already going. So in Boston, I was part of the rotation team, and many times for various rotations, we would collaborate with people who are on the West Coast, so in Seattle and other regions. So we kind of got used to the culture of doing things, over teams and that sort of thing. So that helped with the transition when this became kind of worldwide. So it hasn't been too difficult for me to adjust to that.
Excellent. So thank you. Aurelia, I wanted to make sure to ask you a question as well. And so that question would be, if you had any advice for candidates, that might be getting ready to interview and maybe come on board with Microsoft, what would your advice be to our candidates?
Hi.
Yeah, so I would encourage everyone who is interested in applying for Microsoft to, since there's opportunity that we are all here and talking to you, you can contact us directly. I know that some people have said that they apply in some position, or they upload their resume and they don't hear back. So the pool is really large. So I would encourage you to email us directly, and then we can either see whether we have a fit in our groups, or basically forward your CV to other teams that we know they will be more relevant. So that would be an advice to everybody here. And as Daliso said, we are also hiring at GSL in multiple locations. So, feel free to email us and we can discuss more about the group and the roles and everything.
Excellent. So I do have an interesting question from one of our candidates. And that question, this is an open question to anyone that feels comfortable answering. And that is a comparison. How would you endorse Azure as a product compared to Amazon AWS? Some of the, strengths or features or differences between Azure and Amazon AWS. And I'm looking at Pablo by default.
Sure. I'll give you my 2 cents. I mean, of course we like Azure better, but look, these are like, when you look at AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, all these things, these are some of the largest, most impressive kind of software systems ever built. It's fascinating to watch these things. Like no one person in anywhere of these places could have possibly built something like this. So I think the fact that we are all kind of head to head in competition, and every few months somebody comes up with something new and kind of leapfrogs the rest, shows that this in this particular space, this industry is innovating like at a super interesting pace. It's not afraid to tackle new problems, and it's really pushing the boundaries of what can be done. If you wear like a commercial hat, I'm sure there's ways to compare and say which one is better or more expensive or less expensive or whatever. I think with wearing the head of an engineer that is building parts of this, I'm just fascinated that these things work and they do their job at the scale that they do. We would have never thought, like when I was earlier in my career, that we would see systems of this scale working as a single thing. And I would have even less expected that I could kind of put a line of code on that thing.
Cool, super cool. So thank you for that explanation. But with the time remaining, we've got about 5 minutes left. I want to do two things. I want to go over next steps. So I see a lot of questions coming in related to how do I land an interview or what do I do next? And then, so we're going to address that quickly. So Jesse, I don't know if we have an interview interest form ready yet, or if you want to go over that process with the candidates. And then once we go over that, I'm going to give Todd the final words of our keynote, to close out our event. So Jesse, did you want to speak to the process?
Yeah, definitely. So we'll get your information from Will. He'll send over a final attendee list from this event. And then the Azure team will go over all of the resumes, reach out to selected folks for a technical phone screen. And then folks that pass the technical phone screen will be moved on to a final round virtual interview day. So be on the lookout for some emails in the next couple of weeks, but will definitely send over your information to us.
Okay, perfect. So first of all, thanks everyone for jumping on this call. Usually what I like to do is give the final word to our keynote. So Todd, if you just have any words of encouragement to the candidates, especially considering folks, very diverse backgrounds, listening in. I'm sure a lot of folks, if I was a candidate, I'd be very curious as to, everyone's background. I'd be very encouraged to the fact that Microsoft not only is committed to getting more diversity, but also is showing that they have a diverse, employee base and it's growing to be more diverse. So any words of encouragement for our candidates about potentially landing that job with Microsoft?
Yeah, first of all, I just want to say thank you for everyone making time, right? We don't take that for granted. 90 minutes is a long time out of your schedule, so we certainly appreciate that. First of all, I can't emphasize enough how important it is for us as a company to grow more diverse in our perspective. Right? It's mission critical. Right? If you look at the Microsoft mission, we're literally talking about serving everyone. And we cannot serve everyone if we have a myopic view or a myopic perspective on a market, on a technology, on anything, right? So we actually need to grow. This is not like just doing the right thing just to do the right thing, right? We have a market need. We have a business need to expand our perspective and to have a more diverse workforce, right? So please know that, like, this is something that we need. So you do have leverage. And at the same time, it is a very competitive space. So what's wonderful about the cloud is that we're democratizing access to technology, democratizing access to these incredible, the computer of the world. With that, it's really important as you engage and as you compete for these positions, you have the ability to have access and to, if you will, develop perspective on the job before you actually get the job. And so showing up conversationally fluent on the job to be done is something you can do and something we look for. Having a perspective, right? 30 years ago, you had to get to the job before you can even begin learning about it. Now, you can develop a portfolio on your own, no matter how old you are. Right? You could be in the 10th grade and start developing an AI portfolio. And so that's really important. You can differentiate yourself that way and combine that with the fact that Microsoft needs to grow. Those are two very powerful paradigms. So again, thank you very much, Will. Appreciate this whole forum, this event that you run. It's really well done. Thank you.
No, thank you. We wouldn't be able to do this event, without folks like yourself volunteering your time. I know everyone's time is precious. And also to all of our candidates, we would not be able to do these events if you don't show up, right? So thank you for showing up and participating. If you register through us or, from someone on my team, sharing your resume with someone on my team, we will share all of your details, contact information, and resumes with the Microsoft Azure Data team and Jesse and his team. So you can look forward to potentially landing a phone screen and then an interview after that. So do keep an eye on your email. Sometimes the email communications, depending on where they're coming from, they sometimes go to spam folders. So always check your spam mailbox probably on a daily basis because you might just have an email in there from a recruiter that would like to set up a phone screen. So keep an eye on that. If you have not submitted your resume to us already, make sure to go to hbcuconnect.com/Microsoft/Azure Data. But I'll email everyone, those instructions and those notes, and then you can look forward to hearing back from Microsoft. So thank you. So was there anything that I may have left out, Jesse?
No, that sounds good.
Okay, perfect. So I want to, again, thanks to the Microsoft team for taking the time out, and thanks for all of our attendees for joining us, and good luck once you hear back from Microsoft. Look forward to some success stories and some folks getting hired. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you all. Cheers.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks, Will. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you.